Let's bring in Washington Post reporter Amber Phillips to talk about this and some of the other big headlines in Washington today. Amber, good to see you. You got the green color wheel memo for today. I appreciate that. Or teal, I don't know. My colors.
Yeah, it's greenish, sure.
But let's start with this new office. What more can you tell us about what the White House is saying, an Office of American Innovation, and why now?
Sure. It's a very broad name, right? And I think that's because its mission is broad. What President Trump wants to do through his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is essentially try to bring in the business community in a way that Washington and that the White House hasn't done before, and try to have conversations about how they can retool pretty much everything and anything in the federal government. For example, the Veterans Administration is one top priority. Kushner told my colleagues at the Washington Post that they just want to try to reconfigure to be better run, perhaps more like the private sector. They want to take a look at the opioid crisis and how the business community can play a role in policy there. As for your question to why now, I think the answer is obvious. This office really is aiming at leveraging Trump's persona as a deal maker, as a business guy, as an outsider who's going to get things done. And it comes a couple days after that persona took a huge hit with healthcare.
Yeah, without a doubt, the White House would like us to speak about this new Office of Innovation and how it may move the Trump agenda forward. They do not want us speaking or putting more attention on this questions and the suspicion about Russian election interference. So staying with Jared Kushner here, the Senate Intelligence Committee has confirmed to CBS News that he will be questioned as a part of its ongoing probe into Russia. What more do we know about his role?
Yeah, well, what we know is that he spoke with the Russian ambassador once in December. We already knew that. It came to light. I think the New York Times have reported it a month ago. Now we're learning the Senate Intelligence Community wants to ask Jared Kushner about other times he met with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. and other meetings the Russian ambassador asked him to have, for example, with a banker of a state-owned development bank in Russia. None of these meetings are this like smoking gun that Jared Kushner did in anything illegal from what we know publicly, but it adds to this drip, drip, drip perception that the Trump administration was working closely with Russia and Russian officials during the campaign and shortly after it during the transition, at a moment when Russia meddled in the U.S. election to help Trump win. That's the bottom line. And I'll add an extra significance to this is Kushner is the first White House West Wing official, a member of Trump's inner circle, to be asked to speak before some of these intelligence communities. So this is a big deal.
And it's a drip drip because each and every day there's another element. None of them by themselves are smoking guns, to mix my metaphors, but that it's creating a suspicious scenario, because we're also learning, and the Washington Post has been at the forefront of some of this reporting, that the Republican House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes went to the White House grounds to meet with a source before briefing the president on surveillance information. Where does this investigation stand, and what does that new development mean to its integrity?
Right. That's a great question. It's something we're all trying to scramble to figure out right now. I was working the phones on this before I came here. The bottom line, I think, here is perception. Did the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, which is leading another investigation into Russia meddling and perhaps Trump's inner circle's involvement in any of it, did he go to the White House and get information about wiretapping claims about Russia, about President Trump, and then go tell the president about it before tell his own committee members? I phrase it as a question because we're not sure yet. All we know is that the chairman was at the White House to look at information. We don't know from whom he got it from, that he then shared with the president over his own committee members, but we don't necessarily know its significance to the broader Russia investigation. But it does create this perception that Nunes, a top Trump ally during the transition, might not be as impartial as he says he can be as he leads this investigation into Russia. Certainly Democrats are just totally opening up their fire, accusing him of being impartial, and there have already been some Democratic calls asking for him to step down from the investigation.
And while these Russian investigations move ahead, you have one in the House, one in the Senate, the administration wants to at least deliver some tangibles to the constituents who put President Trump in office. The president says this is a movement, but the healthcare fizzle and just dissolved at the end of last week. The bill was pulled at Trump's request, has raised questions as to how solid this Republican House base is behind any legislation. What will it mean for tax reform and any other major policy items the president wants to achieve?
The million-dollar question right there. The Trump White House and Republican leaders like House Speaker Paul Ryan are immensely frustrated at the conservative faction of their caucus. They feel like that caucus just wouldn't get on board with anything, just wanted to say no for the ability to say no. And Republicans more broadly are having a real on their knees moment right now. They don't know how to get themselves together on the same page on anything to move forward on governing. The White House has suggested over the weekend that maybe they'll just skip the conservative faction and try to have conversations with Democrats and moderate Republicans, but that brings in a whole new set of headaches, right? Like Democrats are under pressure from their base not to negotiate with Trump. I think the Republican Party is humbled and at a moment in time where they don't know how to move forward to get these legislative wins for the president that you mentioned he so badly needs right now.
Is there anything that the White House can point to right now that's encouraging?
Good question. I think I have one for you. The Supreme Court movement to fill the vacant seat that's been vacant for more than a year now. Judge Neil Gorsuch will be confirmed to the Supreme Court. That's my prediction. Democrats are going to make it as painful as possible to make it happen. What it looks like they're going to do is filibuster this nominee, force Senate Republicans to essentially get rid of the filibuster. It's going to be this whole political and policy mess. It's going to drag on. But at the end of the day, President Trump is going to replace a conservative seat with a conservative justice that is very much beloved with his base and with members of Congress. And that is one of the best things he can do right now to shore up his relationship with both those factions.
Yeah, his base certainly looking for a tangible win at this point. Amber Phillips chatting with us from D.C. with the Washington Post. Great to chat with you.
Thank you.